Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, August 7th, 2018 meeting of the Milford Planning and Zoning Board. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, please. Can we have a roll call from the left?
Good evening, I'm Brian Collegian.
John Grant.
Carl S. Moore.
Scott Marlowe.
Tom Panzella.
Denise Doucette-Janice.
Robert Sadie.
I'm Jim Quish, Board Chair. We have David Soltis and Meg Green from the city. Our first order of business is CGS 8-24 approval, looking for approval to put solar panels at various schools. And we have Mr. Riccitelli here to tell us about that.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you very much for hearing our request tonight for a Connecticut General Statutes 8-24 approval. This is actually the third time that Milford Public Schools has come to your board to request approvals for a solar array on our rooftops. The first was in last February. We requested and you approved 4 installations. We came back with, I believe, 4 or 5 more in May, and now we're here. We put roofs on the schools last summer, and so this is a perfect time for us to put the solar panels on the roofs of those remaining schools, which are in front of you. John F. Kennedy, Live Oaks Elementary School, Meadowside, Orange Avenue, and West Shore Middle School. This is in line with the city's initiative to continue whenever we can to put green energy into our buildings. The panels will, there's standard panels. 4 of our schools already have the panels on them: Mathewson, East Shore, Jonathan Law, and Orchard Hills. And so we're really asking for your approval tonight so that we can continue that project, which is, of course, ecologically friendly, but also is going to save the citizens of Milford taxpayers dollars. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the studies that were done to put the solar arrays on, was the roofing systems checked out to make sure that the lifespan on those are proper enough to put panels on top of so that it won't cause a problem later on down the road when the roofs have to be changed?
Yes. Excellent question, and the answer is yes. All of the schools that we've installed have new roofs. When I say new, within the last 4 to 5 years, but in particular, 8 elementary schools and 3 of the middle schools actually received roofs in the last 2 years. They're brand new roofs. They have 30-year warranties, and we checked it out. And we have the engineering studies that they can hold it, and we also have certification from the manufacturers that the warranties will be held.
Anyone else? I would just like to say I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's great for Milford to be part of a sustainable movement, and I'm very pleased about it.
Great.
And then I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 824G approval for putting solar panels on the schools as listed in the proposal.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Next order of business is the CGS 8-24 approval This is a lease at the Margaret Egan Center, and it is, the lease is with the Milford Preschool. Do we have anybody here representing the applicant? I guess not. David, can you speak to it?
The city has space at the Margaret Egan Center that they would like to continue leasing to the preschool.
Is this a new lease, or is this an extension of an existing lease?
I believe it's an extension. I'd have to open up the file, take a look.
That's okay, it's not a problem. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, I'd hear a motion.
I move to approve the 824G approval for extending the lease to Margaret Egan Center for the preschool.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion granted. Next order of business is 622 Gulf Street, petition of Kevin Cresadian Esquire to create 4-lot subdivision and coastal area site plan review on map 28, block 520, parcel 26, of which George H. Ward is the owner.
Mr. Chair, just let the record reflect that Nancy Austin has joined the board.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. I'd like to state for the record that I did watch the YouTube coverage of the last meeting that I did not attend. If anyone else wasn't here and watched that, it'd be good to tell us.
I did as well. Denise just said Denise.
I did also.
Okay, thank you very much. David, would you just give us a recap, please?
Basically, the applicant is
You okay? Yep.
okay. The applicant for 622 Gulf Street wants to create a 4-lot subdivision by variance of the subdivision regulations. To do that, they need to vary 3.2.10, which is varying the rear lot of a 25-foot access way for each lot, a combined requirement of 50 feet to the existing 10-foot easement width. They need to vary the requirement that the side and lot lines, lot lines be at right angles to the streets for lots 1, 2, and 4, which is a variance of section 3.2.7. And then in the draft motion that I gave you, I'm pointing out that if the board chooses to approve this, the applicant should make the monetary donation to the Open Space Fund in accordance with section 3.10 of the subdivision regulations.
Thank you. Does any member of the board wish to be heard on this?
Oh, and Mr. Chair, one other thing. The board needs to have 8 votes in favor for this to pass. So you would have to have 8 votes that would go with the motion as it's drafted.
Anybody? I'd like to say a few words about this. I think that it is, as one of the neighbors said last meeting, it really is a use for the property that is very unintrusive, and it keeps the character of that neighborhood. And I think it is, the addition of one house, I think is, it really would add a de minimis amount of traffic. I think that you possibly could have a household with 6 drivers in it, or 2. So no matter what the impact of one extra single-family home is, I don't see that as creating havoc. So I'm in favor of it, and I hope the board will approve it. And I will hear a motion. Mr. Grant?
I move to approve 622 Gulf Street and residential 18 partition of Kevin Crusada Esquire to create a 4-lot subdivision and coastal area site plan review on map 28, block 520, parcel 26, of which George H. Ward is the owner, by variance per section 6.4 of the subdivision regulations, specifically, number 1, 3.2.10, vary the rear lot requirements of 25 feet, access way for each lot, a combined requirement of 50 feet to the existing 10-foot driveway easement. Number 2, 3.2.7, vary the requirements that set lot lines to be at right angles to the street for lots 1, 2, and 4. And 3, the applicant shall to make a donation for the open space fund.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If we could vote by roll call, it'll be with the motion or against the motion. From left to right?
I'm with the motion.
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 Against the motion.
And I am with the motion. Motion passes 8-1. On to new business, we have 17 Gardner Ave, Zone R5, petition of Paul Freya for coastal management site plan review, approval to construct a single-family residence on map 27, block 455, parcel 9, of which Kristen L. Blondo is the owner. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Paul Freya, 850 East Broadway, Milford, Connecticut. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I just wanted to point out a Scribner's error. I'm actually the owner of the property, not Kristen Blando. You have any questions, I'd be happy to answer about the property. Okay. Essentially, I'm just looking for approval as part of the process to build a single-family residence at 17 Gardner Avenue.
David, do you have any comment?
The applicant proposes to construct a zoning-compliant single-family dwelling in an AE11 flood zone. A rear yard variance was granted on 6/12/18. The city engineer recommends a payment to the sidewalk fund. A stormwater treatment plan needs to be approved by the city engineer. There appears to be no adverse environmental impact on coastal resources.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I would hear a motion.
I move to approve the petition for a single-family residence on map 27, block 455, parcel 9, labeled as 17 Gardner Avenue, with the conditions.
Two things. You need to approve the coastal area, the coastal management site plan. It's not just the house, so it's the coastal site plan that your motion should be approving. And the condition would be that the applicant submit to the city engineer a stormwater treatment plan.
For approval for the coastal site plan.
And so by acclamation, the language about the engineer requirements and the
Sidewalk.
and the sidewalk fund is included in the motion. Am I correct? Correct. And do we have a second? Okay. Like five, everybody. Pick one. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Quisha, point of order, please, on the next motion, the next area. I'm going to have to recuse myself on the item number 2 on new business.
Next order of business, 16 Seaview Ave, R10, petition of John Wicko for a coastal management site plan review approval to construct a single-family residence on map 9, block 79, parcel 8, of which Mark and Teresa Valentine are the owners. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Good evening, John Wicko, office at 50 Broad Street in Milford. I'm going to hook up to the system, if I could. Okay. I'm here representing the Valentines for the Coastal Area Management Site Plan Review. The site is located at 16 Seaview, Laurel Beach area, within the flood hazard areas AE11 and VE14. There's a line that cuts through. I'll explain the meaning of that later. There's an existing house on the site that they're going to raise, demolish, and remove from the site, and that flood elevation is around 12. SP1, which is up on the screen, shows the proposed in between the Laurel Beach Access Way and number 15, the existing house. Site elements that they're proposing is driveway, brick walks on the sides, a rear patio, lawn for the most part with existing hedges at the Laurel Beach property, and then existing tree in the front with a new tree and a hedgerow proposed at the front yard. Site plan 1 of Codis Bodie and Associates, the engineers for the project, depicts very much the same elements, but with setbacks, the engineering elements, and the building depicted. SP2 is where the meat of it is. This shows the site detention system for the stormwater, which are concrete galleys, grading, drainage, soil erosion controls, and this was reviewed by the city engineer, which is looking favorable upon this. There were 4 items in the review memo which have been addressed. The concrete sidewalks was one thing that the owner, Mr. Valentine, is requesting a waiver for the sidewalks, since that side of Seaview Avenue there are no sidewalks, so he'd like to contribute to the sidewalk fund, which the city engineer supports. And the building itself, these are on A1, the foundation plan, and then the first floor plan. The garage elevation, which is in this area, is below the 11.0, so we do have the required flood venting for that sub-base flood elevation slab. The first floor is set at 14.7 feet, which is much higher than the required 11, but we felt more comfortable meeting the elevation of the VE 14. There is the VE 14, if I can go back to the site plan, there is that heavy dashed line. That's the demarcation from the wave action to the flood zone over here. So we designed an open deck system at the first and second and third floors, which is independent of the main structure, but it meets the requirements for the VE zone. It's designed with concrete steel beams, but through discussions with staff, that we decided that it'd be best to keep that independent, so in case something happens to that, it doesn't interfere or damage the house proper. But like I said, the house is designed for the VE 14 anyways. So the entrance is, the first floor is the entrance with a family room and a two-car garage with storage in the rear, and a bathroom that's going to function as the beach kind of changing room. The second floor is the elevated living area with a great room, kitchen, dining room, and a guest room, and all the other niceties that make this house a wonderful thing. And the third floor are the bedrooms. So there are a total of 5 bedrooms, 4 on the third floor and 1 on the second floor. So we have an elevator service too, if you noticed in the center, that goes from the garage all the way up for convenience. That the elevator is gonna rest at the first floor, which is above any of the flood elevations. So meeting all the requirements of the materials in the flood plain. And the house is 4,634 square feet of living area. And on this sheet is a roof plan, which I neglected to mention. On A1, I did a little diagram. There's a roof turret. If you take the high and low of that little piece, it's above the 35 feet, but there is a section in the regulation that allows a small portion to be above. But the main roof is within the 35-foot distance from the average roof height to average grade. Let's see, where am I? So yeah, the front elevation, the street side, it shows stone at the entrance with an arch into an open porch. We got the two-car garage. There's some architectural metal elements there, these two roof structures, and a plain and simple gable. Front, the side depicts the dormers and the roof configuration. On that roof plan, I neglected to say that there are the air conditioning condensers are going to be on that roof section, so we don't have to elevate or hang off the side of the building any of the mechanical units, and shows that open deck system towards the water side. The materials are going to be, as I said, the stone at the front, stone base, cedar perfection, vinyl siding, solid PVC, trims and casing, so it's a rather robust and resilient weather resistant finish system. The rear shows those decks again with the open rails. Also has the height calculation on that gable elevation on 1A5. I had this drawing, so I put it in, but it shows all the vertical relationships of the flood plains and where the heights are, what the regulated heights and what the proposed heights are, and also the average roof height on that larger master bedroom gable. And this plate just describes in color the front elevation and that rear elevation sketch. So that's simply put the presentation. Looking for an approval for the coastal area management. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
David?
The applicant proposes to construct a zoning compliant single-family house in the AE and VE 14 flood zone. The city engineer recommends that the garage floor be a minimum of 16 inches above the roadway center line grade. The proposal does not appear to have an adverse impact on coastal resources.
Do we have any questions from the board?
On the engineer's proposal, they're about being 16 inches above the roadway.
Yep.
Does this meet that requirement?
That is not a requirement of the regulations. There's conversation of in the future, some years off, that the Seaview Avenue would be raised. Speaking with Codis Bodie, the engineer, we did raise the garage slab marginally, but we don't. We feel that if we go up that amount, it would be a rather hardship to the house itself and also to the neighbors. None of the houses to the left, right, that have been either rebuilt or newly constructed are at that elevation. So since it's not a regulation, the owner would feel more comfortable taking his chances, if you will, but and leaving it at the regulated amount.
Just something the city engineer is trying to implement because of maybe future raising of the roadways. But I understand it definitely is not a regulation to do so. But
Right.
I just was wondering if it met it.
Yeah,
if
no, that
you
was
tried it or not.
Yeah, the city engineer did bring that to our attention. We discussed it with the engineer and also the owner, and that's what they would like to do.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the coastal management site plan review for 16 Seaview Avenue, map 9, block 79, parcel 8, with the condition that the owner provides funding for the sidewalk fund.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? It looks like a beautiful house. Beautiful job.
Yeah, the owners are very happy. They're excited. Oh, the construction, they are going to start, if we do get approval, later at the end of the summer season. So kind of the best time for construction at the
Great.
water.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
David, would you get Mr. Sadie? Next order of business is 990 Naugatuck Avenue, Zone HDD, petition of Jeffrey Gordon requesting that he could pursue a change of zone without submitting an application for special permit and site plan review as per 10.1.2 of our zoning regulations.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Franklin Pillacy. I'm a land use attorney, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant together with Jeff Gordon. So Jeff Gordon is going to talk a little bit about this, and then I'll make a few comments when Jeff has finished his part of the presentation.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Gordon. I'm a landscape architect and site planner with Codis Bodie and Associates, doing business 263 Boston Post Road in the town of Orange. What we're looking to do here is we are filing a number of applications along the way. One is for the final phase. I believe it would actually be phase 7 of the Caswell Cove condominiums. This was a project that was approved a number of years ago, This is an unbuilt phase. I have letters back from 1992 which talked about different modifications to the approval, and the last letter said that if you modify it again, we need to come back before the commission, so that is part and parcel of what we're looking to do. But as part of that, the adjoining parcel to the final phase of Caswell Cove is 990 Naugatuck Avenue. Some records show it also as 0 Naugatuck Avenue. This is approximately 7.9 acres owned by Recycling, Inc. This has been the subject of much litigation. It'll continue to be a subject of more litigation as time goes on. The use in the Housatonic Design District for the facility that's there is a permitted special use. The user's license had been lost, and they're suing to get it back again. They lost the case, they're appealing, so we assume that this is going to continue on. But as part and parcel of the Caswell expansion, our client is entering into an agreement to purchase the Recycling Incorporated site, but would be unable to go forward with a site plan and special permit due to a unique set of circumstances. One of which is there would be a need for an upgrading of the railroad crossing, which is about a 3.5 to 4 year process. So to have that in place before we'd made a site plan application obviously would push the can down the road quite a bit. As the commission and staff well knows, is that on some of the smaller projects you see, to go for the zone change and the site plan special permit at the same time would make quite a bit of sense. But the size of this undertaking and the time frame, the uniqueness of the property makes it such where that's very, very challenging to do. Also, the expense of going forward with all the site plan and special permit for an undertaking of this nature would be very, very, very expensive without having a zone in place. DOT, Metro North, those elements will not entertain the applications for upgrading the crossing without having a certain amount of zoning in place. So it's a conundrum of the chicken before the egg here. We believe that it's not necessarily appropriate in this venue to have the full-blown application, but the commission would want to have an idea of what could happen on this site. It's always important not to fall in love with a use in order to give a zone change, because once you give the zone change, the use could disappear and another use could take place. I'm reminded of the issue on the former Stu Leonard site in Orange, where a number of years ago an application for a zone change came in to put the Incredible Universe, Red Lobster, and a Marriott. They realized if they changed the zone, they could wind up with Kmart, Taco Bell, and Super 8. So they denied it, and about 6 weeks later, Radio Shack Tandy Corporation pulled the plug on all their Incredible Universe facilities. You probably never heard of it because they only built 4 of them nationwide. So if you fall in love with the user and the user disappears, you're still left with the zone. So therefore, the zone should make sense on its own merits. What's the advantage to the city of Milford? Well, if we go to the Waterfront Design District, every use in the Waterfront Design District is a special use that gives the commission a lot more control. Under the Housatonic Design District, uses that are permitted in the light industrial use are permitted as of right, such as these wholesale and storage yards and things that lead you to a recycling facility of sorts. Those kind of uses can be as of right, and the commission would have less control. Going to the Waterfront Design District, well, we're on the waterfront. It makes sense. It's adjoining waterfront, and all the other Waterfront Design District land in town is already developed. So it's not like you would be opening up a whole new aspect of zoning there. As you can see, to the north we have Waterfront Design District. To the east we have the railroad tracks and the light industrial. And to the south we have the Housatonic Design District. which is the power plant, as well as this site being in Housatonic Design District. The plan is, again, to expand the Caswell Cove to the north, top of the page, to the intervening piece between the existing Caswell Cove and the recycling piece. Very difficult to expand that with the uncertainty of the recycling piece, that it could wind up with a different operator and still be recycling or something of that nature. So, ergo, to have better control, the waterfront design district would be an appropriate use. The proposal in a preliminary format would be three apartment buildings. We would also be filing with you an amendment to your regulations to allow in the waterfront design district such apartments on the water. And again, that's not before you today, but that would be coming before you with the actual zone change, public hearing and application. Again, the point is that all the rest of the waterfront design district land in town is developed already, so it would not be opening up those pieces to that kind of a use. So it's our belief that a full site plan application and special permit application is not practical at this level. What we are looking to do is have the zone change to create certainty of what would not come next door. That would be more of a waterfront use that would be more compatible with the expanded Caswell Cove, completing the original approvals of that property. So I'll be here to answer questions, but I'm sure Attorney Pillacy has some more of the legal considerations and also representing Caswell Cove's interest to consider.
Approximately how many apartments are in your preliminary plan?
Preliminary plan would be probably 210, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it is 8 acres, basically. With a garage under. And would also have to have a waterfront promenade to create the waterfront access, which doesn't currently exist. Thank you.
Mr. Gordon, I have some questions for you, please. If you would flip the map back over, the presentation, I'm just trying to understand. I thought I heard you say that the area you're looking at is north of the existing Caswell Cove project. Is that accurate, or is it south of the existing?
The Caswell Cove is north.
Okay.
There's an intervening piece between that, which is the final phase that's approved, but with modifications has to come back for your blessing. And then this is the recycling piece, which is the Housatonic Design District, and that's the power plant.
Okay, then we go to page 2 of your map, and we just got this just a few minutes ago. The proposed structures is what Mr. Quish asked about, the 210 units. The proposed structures are on the bottom, so they're south of what would be the existing Caswell Cove?
This would be the final phase modification that will be coming back to you. And then below that is a preliminary to see what we would possibly develop. Now again, there'd be changes for building code, things of that nature. We would be looking at certain modifications in your regulations. There would be a parking level underneath. There'd be waterfront access, things of that nature, parking for that. All those things have to be entered with the CAM application that would be filed for that.
Thank you. My questions have been answered.
Thank you.
Again, Franklin Pillacy, 365 Main Street, Watertown, Connecticut, and I am here in support of the request before you tonight to enter a finding that it would be inappropriate on the facts of this case to require the special permit and site plan to be filed at the same time that the zone change and the text change comes in. As stated generally, and in some areas specifically by Jeff, a zone change, we feel, and we hope that you would feel would be beneficial for both parties. The zone change would protect the city of Milford against some of the transfer station recycling type uses that have been subject of a great deal of litigation. I've been personally involved in that litigation because Caswell was also a party to that litigation. And I'm aware that so far, the city and Caswell have prevailed in that litigation, so that use has not occurred, and hopefully with the initial zone change that is being sought, it will protect against that type of a use from ever coming back before you again. And under the existing zone, that use does have some arguable merit were they to try or keep trying. But again, specifically, the site also includes the railroad crossing, which is part of the access, and STC, and obviously the environmental issues. So it's a very long process. It's a very costly process to require a site plan and a special permit. All of the attachments and submittals and requirements for those types of applications would be very, very burdensome and maybe, in fact, impossible in this situation. So again, the applicant is just asking to be allowed to file a zone change application with the accompanying text changes as a first step in a multi-step, multi-application process that will take obviously a number of years to complete. So hopefully the board will agree that it does make sense in this case to enter a finding that the zone change and the text change can be filed, again, without the special permit or site plan submittals. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer any questions.
Mr. Sadi.
Councilor, again, I'll make this clear. This is a petition for a zone change, which you're looking for now. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And our regulations require that a petition for change of zone shall include a fiscal impact study. Have you completed the fiscal impact study yet?
I would have to defer that to Jeff.
Sir, actually, what we're here for tonight is to find out if we can waive the site plan and special permit. We have to do the fiscal impact study, we have to do the CAM application. Those things would have to be provided before we could have a public hearing for the actual zone change to be heard.
So there is no fiscal impact study that's been attached to your petition for zone change. Is that your answer?
Mr. Chair, maybe I can clarify. This is an unusual request tonight because our regulations require that if someone comes in for a zone change, you have to have, like you said, the fiscal impact study, the special permit and site plan. Our regulations allow an applicant to come in, as the applicant is doing tonight, and ask that they be relieved of having to do that for whatever the circumstances, and you heard the circumstances. So if the board agrees to that, then at some point in the future, there will be an application for the zone change, and at that point, it will not have a site plan or special exception. You would just be making a zone change.
And so it would then, that application would have the economic impact study as well as be associated with the public hearing specific to that request.
Yeah, the thing that will be interesting, and if any of this happens, is they'd be doing a fiscal impact study for that change on a project that may never get built.
Right.
But the zone could be different, and some other project could be built, and the fiscal impact study at that point, you know, it doesn't matter, the zone has changed. So.
Right. Who currently owns the property?
I can answer that for you, Mr. Chair. It's Recycling Inc., Gus Curcio.
Right, so that if the zone change happened, then that could be something that he would act on, and it's possible.
It's possible he could act on it. It's possible that this developer, if this developer buys it, decides to not build it, build something different in compliance with the regulations, or sell it to someone else to do something in compliance with the regulations.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
Members of the commission, my name is John Geddes. I'm president of Primrose Companies, and I'm the applicant. Let me just give you a little bit of history. About 6 years ago, I entered into discussions with the board at Caswell Cove. Their interest was to provide or to do the next phase that hadn't been built, and I began to look at the issues and the reasons why it was never built. And quite frankly, and we have, I believe it's the president of the board of Caswell here, and she can, relay or, put in her 2 cents to this. But basically, when I began to investigate, the situation, what I determined was that the reason why it was never built was because of recycle. I began to investigate, the issues and how this could happen. Now, many of you may have heard of the Shelton redevelopment area, and I'm the developer, architect, and builder of the Shelton, riverfront. So I have vast experience. I started the Canal Street redevelopment in 2004, and I'm still at it. And there we had a railroad crossing, we had all the environmental issues and everything else that, that we had to contend with, that I had to contend with. So when I began to look at how we could proceed to develop the next phase of Caswell, it was, what I determined was that nothing could ever be built unless recycle was dealt with. So the agreement I reached with Caswell was that I would enter into an agreement to move that phase forward under one condition, and that was that I had to find a way to enter into an agreement to acquire the property from recycle. And so what I have is I have a contract to acquire the property from recycle. And the agreement is that if I can structure the program, the moment we get the zone change, recycle just removes all of their litigation. All the litigation stops because one can't be done without the other. Meaning recycle cannot be expanded without recycle being out of the way. The biggest problem is having, the nuisance of, a garbage transfer station adjacent to a residential development. So I currently have a contract with Recycle, Gus Curcio, to acquire the site as long as certain things take place. One is the zone change that would allow for the construction of residential development on the site. Now, one of the things that's interesting on this particular site, which is something that I went through in Shelton, and that is that we have a railroad, we have contamination, we have the same type of issues that I've spent years dealing with in Shelton. All of those take time. And the State Traffic Control Commission will be involved, Department of Rails will be involved, Metro North will be involved, all of these agencies will be involved. And it's not just the time involved and the expense, it's that you can't do one thing without the other. We can't pursue an approval from the State Traffic Control Commission or Department of Rails or anybody else if we don't have a project that's real. And if we don't have a zoning in place on the site, how can we claim it's real? So what we're asking you to do is we're asking you to allow me to proceed to put this program that I've been working on for so many years in place. This will help everybody involved. It will help Caswell Cove, not only getting rid of a nuisance that they've been part of a litigation forever, but it will also bring them some additional funds that they need for the purpose of upgrading the Caswell facilities. It'll get rid of the lawsuits that that the city of Milford has had, along with the state and everybody else, because all of those lawsuits will be withdrawn. The city attorney in Milford is aware of these. Everybody in the city, is aware that if this happens, what I've programmed out, that everything will come together. So what we're here for now is just to ask you to allow me to proceed to file or to have these professionals file the appropriate applications without having to go through the whole thing that would be needed. I mean, I can't provide you with an STC approval if I don't have the ability to do that. And I think that's what you would need for the purpose of going through the normal process. I can answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair, may I clarify something? We don't need STC approval for a project. What happens is you would approve a project, and then after the fact, they would go to the state for the OSTA approval. So that is I just want to correct.
Well, the STC, well, I don't know if that's totally correct. My experiences have been that it's not necessarily the STC approval, it's the railroad crossing. I mean, what you have here is that the state STC will require the Department of Rails to sign off. Department of Rails, because of the history on this particular crossing, will require, a set of gates and controls. And I don't believe that you could approve a project without having those approvals in place. I may be wrong, but I
That's a separate issue from the STC and OSTA. So I'm just
No,
clarifying that. I agree with what you're saying, because you can't have a project here unless you can actually put a road in over the railroad track. But I'm just clarifying for the board.
As I said before, one of the things that you have with me is the fact that I have experience in this. When I dealt with Canal Street, there was different. It was only it's only a cargo train. It's the Housatonic Railroad that goes through, downtown Shelton. But it's the same issues. It's the same agencies. The railroads are autonomous. The state doesn't control them. It's federal, so you can't force them to do anything. And their process just goes on and on and on. As an example, even though it was Malone and McBroom that handled the traffic engineering in Shelton, but by the time we got through, we spent almost $400,000, getting, the approvals. And even after we had the approvals, and in Shelton's case, I had cooperation with the city. The city was a partner in the infrastructure improvements. The city actually posted a $1 million bond to install a set of gates and crossing on Worcester Street. And here it is, I think it's 6 years later, we still don't have cooperation from the railroad. And the street is still closed, and we still don't have the crossing. So, we're dealing with agencies that are extremely difficult to deal with. And I don't think this will be the same case with Metro North, because I'm sure that given the history of that particular crossing, and the fact that, that a train did hit a truck there one time, that they'd be more than willing to cooperate to see something there that would control, the crossing. So I think I'm confident that we'll be in a better position with them, but it's still going to be a process. It's not going to be easy. So, and again, I understood this going into this whole thing. The one factor that you need to consider as well is this, that with the zone change, what that does for me is that the development of the site may take years, but one thing I'm confident on is that a transfer station will not reopen on the site, which allows Caswell to do the next phase. Now, Caswell, just to give you a heads up, the phase that they did not build was 80-something units. What I'm proposing is 45 townhouses. So it's not as if, I'm trying to overkill that site. So, the next application will be come in for the modification of the plan will be for 45 townhouses. So as I said, this particular request is for us to be able to proceed without having to do the full blown out application, or the site plan, or,
Great, thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions from the board, or David?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions and clarifications. I just want to clarify something Mr. Gordon said, and he didn't really misspeak, but I just want to make sure that the board understands that Phase 7 of Caswell Cove is zoned appropriately for the residential when that moves forward, so you need to know that. One of the questions I have is, when would you take possession of 990 Naugatuck Avenue?
as soon as we have, the approvals in place.
So which approvals?
Well, they're all falling in line. I mean, we're ready to file the application for Caswell, but I cannot have Caswell proceed without having this zone change in place. Oh, no, the way the contract is written is that as soon as we have the zone change in place, then, we proceed.
So when the zone change is in place, all operations at 990 Naugatuck Avenue cease, and
Yes.
nothing else can go on that property?
Nothing else can go on.
Okay.
The operation, not only that, but the way that the contracts are agreed, or have been stipulated, is all lawsuits are withdrawn.
Yeah, the lawsuits are a separate issue from the uses that may be allowed there.
Well, yes and no, because the problem we have is that there's still pending litigation against the state, against, all of this, but all of that ceases. And then the other thing also is that would allow for taxes to be brought, all of this brings, comes to a head.
The reason why I'm asking the question is, what you have said this evening is that this project could be a decade before it's done. And I'm just looking for an assurance that if the board moves forward with this, that although it may take a decade for you to stick a shovel in the ground on this site, that there isn't going to be any of the continuing uses that may be allowed under the old zone as, non-conforming uses.
What I'm committed tonight here, and I have authority to commit that, is that the moment we get this zone change in place, all previous zones cease to exist.
Well, that's great, but that's not what the law is, and the attorney next year will tell you
Oh, no,
that.
but again, that can be stipulated by,
And just one other point, the application for the zone change was also signed by Mr. Curcio as the owner, so he is fully abreast of what we're doing here tonight.
That doesn't mean that he's going to stop operations if there's a regulation or a zone change. So I'm looking for the board, on behalf of the board, for the assurance that in fact all operations on that site are going to cease, even if they're pre-existing non-conforming. I mean, that's the pitch you've made tonight. And then
I understand the concern. The only thing I can tell you is this, that, it took me almost a year to structure this agreement, that we have. I'm confident, I've been at this for 40 years now, and so I'm not a novice, at this game. I know who I'm dealing with, and I know, the reputation and the history. But I also know, and this was part of the discussions that I had openly with Caswell, both Attorney Polisi that represents them and the board members, that, this was the way we had to go. That, and that I would have to structure a program that made sense. Because keep in mind that I'm committed to developing the next phase of Caswell. I can't do that if I'm, if there's a program next door that's going to create a nuisance that's going to depreciate what we're trying to do.
thank you. I want to follow up with that because that's the perfect segue into, okay, you get that regulation, that zone change, now you have the power plant next to you, so isn't it the same argument?
Well, yes
you're
and
just,
no.
you're just sort of kicking the can literally down the road to the next property?
Well, that's a known factor. The difference is this, you still don't have trucks. And again, we have, she can come up and she can explain the nuisance that they've been suffering. between the dust and the trucks and every so forth. And I looked at the power plant, the issues involved with it and so forth. And as part of the site plan, once we get into it, there was room that was left, for humongous berm and, pine trees and, everything else that could possibly screen or, assist to do with it. But again, it's more of, okay, we have a situation there that is a constant nuisance. And, and that's the reason why this phase was never built at Caswell. Now, we're going to proceed to build it if I can get all of the other, factors in place. Because without it, it can't be built. And the nuisance will continue, and the issues will continue. So the program that I've structured here, that I'm confident legally that I can, move on, is one that the whole thing with recycle is going to go away. There will be no longer the issues of the transfer station and everything else involved with it. Keep in mind that it's not just, the zoning is one issue. The railroad crossing is another issue. But I know the environmental, there's about $1 million in environmental cleanup there that is known. We don't know what's not known. When at Canal Street, when I got involved and I purchased the Beard asphalt plant, which was also known as the Tilcon asphalt plant, we spent about $1 million in environmental cleanup of soils. And then, I convinced Avalon to come in, and Avalon, we built the Avalon facility, which was 250 units. And during that process, we spent another $1 million on environmental that hadn't been known. So, and I'm sure that here we have similar issues. And so once this program gets going, even after this board, if they go along with the application, approves it, we still have a long way of doing the environmental cleanup, doing all the factors that need to be done. So it's going to be a long process. Not that it's not going to be active. The work will be going on. It's just that it'll take so long. Environmental, as all of you know, it's not just starting to dig. You got the environmental companies, you got LEPs, you got the state, you got the EP, you got the history of the site. There's citations there that involves everybody. You got EPA because you're on the water. So there are so many, factors involved that it's going to be, a lengthy process. The one thing with me is that I'm familiar with it. I've done it. I have the experience in it. So it's not new. I know what we're faced with. And I think in this particular case, the program that we'll outline for you as we go forward with this process is going to be one that you're going to be confident that it's something that I think is great for this particular location, this particular site.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from the board?
Just to follow up on, David actually asked a lot of what I was concerned about with some of the questions. But as you had said, that once you get your zoning change, in theory, the operation that is there shuts the door. And if this is a 10-year process, what happens with that property during this 10-year process? Is it just vacant, or what happens there?
Well, no, it's not a 10-year process. It's probably around a 3.5, 4-year process. And a lot of that depends on the cooperation from the railroad. The environmental, issues within a year and a half, those are dealt with. It's more of the approvals to get the crossing, and the reason being is because, it's very involved, where the controls are probably down here in the center of town, and how do they get, the lines up to control the crossing up there. So, but it generally takes about 4 years to go through the entire program to get the site ready for construction.
And understood. I guess my question was more is during that 4-year process, does anything happen on that property?
There's no activity other than the activity pertaining to preparation of getting the site ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zaddy.
Thank you. I think there was a statement made that Mr. Kersey was on board Is that what I heard from somebody today?
Yes, he signed the application that we have ready.
Okay, can you tell me why he's not here, why we don't have a signed signature from him telling us that's what occurred?
Mr. Sadi, I can tell you that we do have in our file the letter saying that they can apply. We do have that.
Okay. Our next thing is that somebody also represented that everybody in the city was aware of what's going on. Is there also any letters from any city official supporting this?
No, what I meant was that and again, most of the knowledge I have is from, not being directly involved, but participating in this whole process. But again, you have to understand, I entered into a contractual agreement with Mr. Curcio Recycling, which allows me to proceed to get the necessary approvals. Once the approvals are in place, we close on the property. What was stated was that he was on board. Basically, there's no such thing as being on board. In order for me to file the appropriate applications, the current owner has to sign authorizing me to proceed, and that's what he did. Now, what Mr. Gordon was saying was that obviously if he was not approving of me proceeding, he wouldn't have signed, given me authority to do so. So basically, his role is that he's selling, I made a deal with him to purchase the property, and he's selling the property to me based on the conditions, and the condition is that I get the zoning approvals.
Thank you. Any other questions? So just to remind the board, we're not approving anything tonight, if we do approve it, except allowing them to come before us and have a public hearing to drill down into the details. So we're not approving of the details, we're not approving of the deal, we're just allowing them to come in with a request for the zone change without the site plan. So it's not critical at this point. I mean, we're going to get a lot more information at the public hearing. The public will be able to speak. And at that point, if we're not satisfied, we can ask for more information and continue the public hearing till the next meeting, so we can get all the information that we need, as well as input from the community at that time, if we were to allow this. If we vote not to allow this, their deal may be done or not done, I don't know, that's really not our business, but it will either come back to us in another form or not. So that being said, I would entertain a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion. Make a motion to approve the petition of Jeffrey Gordon requesting that they can start the process of pursuing a change of zone without submitting an application for special permit or site plan review.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Carl. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Mr. Quish. I've only been on board a short period of time, but I'm really surprised how we have to make a motion like this without really very little information. We got a map 5 minutes before the hearing started. I don't think we should vote on it tonight. I think we should continue this to an appropriate time to get further information and then make an informed decision on this.
I would agree with that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Grant.
Agree with that. That's not to vote on it tonight.
Mr. Chair? If that's the way the board's going to go, then remember, it's not a public hearing, so, I mean, if there's information, more information that you want from the applicant, obviously any guidance you can give him, I'm sure they would appreciate. Because the simple issue tonight is whether or not you allow them to make an application for a zone change. And if you feel there's not enough information, I'm not sure what other information based on their presentation tonight they'll be able to give you, because they're not doing a site plan, and they're not doing, you know, a special permit application. So,
Yep, and so a question for Mr. Sadi. If, again, just to reiterate, the level of scrutiny that you feel we lack at this point is because we're not at the point where they have the fiscal impact study and have whatever presentation they'll make at a public hearing sufficient to hopefully convince the public who shows up to see it their way. So I don't think we're really asking a whole lot of the board because of any lack of information. I will postpone the vote till the next meeting, and we do have two members that don't feel sufficiently comfortable with it. So that's what I'll do. And I guess, David, if somebody wants to fire a question to you, you could, so that would open up anybody that wanted to email David with a question. He could then get it to the applicant. The applicant can then either come prepared with the answer at the, when it comes back on the agenda. But I thank you for your presentation and your passionate plea here, but I think the...
But I believe there's a motion on
Oh, there is, that's right. So then I would ask if you wanted to rescind that motion to allow other members to feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely, I can rescind the motion. I mean, I'm not maybe in agreement with that, because I think that what we're asking, or they're asking us just to, can we pursue a zoning change process?
No, I get that.
They're not asking
I
for a
understand
zoning
that.
change.
I kind of
so-
agree with you, but...
But yes, I will rescind the motion.
And would you
yes.
rescind your second, Carl?
Yes.
Okay. So then we will put it on the next meeting, and encourage anyone with questions to get them to David. And again, thanks the applicant for your time. Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item of business is liaison reports. There is a meeting on Thursday of the Regional Planning Board that I sit on, and I will, at the next meeting, I will give a brief report on that activity. Regulations Subcommittee, just before Mr. Grant gives us his input, the items that are in front of us are, again, in a similar circumstance. They did come in late, and that's not a policy we want to pursue. There is and will be a public hearing on these changes, so we will have time between now and the public hearing to have ample time to review and consider what's in front of us, and still have the opportunity to make changes in language if that's what the board feels is important. So what we're asking tonight for would just be to circulate these changes to the appropriate agencies and get it on the path for a future public hearing. John, please.
All right, to rehash that, the 5 proposals that you have, or amendments you have in front of you, again, are from out of the subcommittee and from the staff on things that have happened in the city with either problems or updating or just deleting based on changes in state statutes or just normal procedures within the city. As Jim mentioned, basically what we're asking for tonight is basically just the board's approval to forward these out to the different committees and city agencies for their review, along with, at the time, you can also review them. And basically, the agencies have 35 days to review everything and get back with their comments. So what we're asking for, I'll go over each one just to give you a brief information. The amendment number 2-18 is for section 4.1.7.4 and for some definitions to be added under 11.2. The first change is to basically security fencing, which is 8 foot high. Our normal regulations allow for only 6, but in special circumstances where security is required around a site, say like a subdivision for electrical or some type of manufacturing facility, we would allow an 8 foot high fence. Right now, also, under this particular amendment, there's 2 definitions to be added. Basically, one is to clarify what a security fence is, and the other one is to clarify what a normal fence is. And basically, the other reason that the regular fence definition is being placed in here is to actually regulate the use of barbed wire, razor wire, and electronic fencing to try to keep it out of the residential areas. Right now, our zoning regulations would allow somebody to put up a barbed wire fence around their house, which I actually have a neighbor that wants to do that. That's what that's what brought this one up. So what we're doing is saying that basically would not be able to use barbed wire, razor wire, or electronic fencing or electric fencing in a residential area, but allow it to be used in a security situation, say like a UI subdivision. They could put barbed wire on top of their fence. That's the first amendment. The second one deals with section 3.11.2 and special uses, 3.11.2.9 recycling plants. Right now, basically, the way our language is in the regulation, this is more of a housekeeping item. The state regulation section has changed. So what we're doing is amending the our wording inside our regulations to coincide and coordinate with the state wording, and that's the way that one goes for recycling plants. The third one is amendment number 4. It deals with Article 10, 10.1 authority. This has to deal with basically junkyards. Right now, our regulation states that the board is supposed to approve junkyard locations. However, that is actually not allowed by state law. The state actually is the one who takes and determines where a junkyard can be placed. They do look at our zoning regulations for the zones, but basically they're the ones who make the decision. So this amendment is to basically just take that language out, so that and say that the state has the say in it. The fourth one is amendment number 5. It deals with base flood elevation and design flood elevation. FEMA has come out with some changes in their regulations, and the building code has made some changes in the building code as far as flood regulations and heights. So this amendment is to bring our regulations up to meet the requirements, or actually exceed a little bit the requirements of the building code, and to be more in line with the FEMA's requests as to what they have in their regulations. The last one is amendment number 11. This deals with 3.1.5.2 and 3.1.3.8, commercial vehicles. There's really nothing in our regulations that really defines commercial vehicles. There has been some problems in the past with commercial vehicles being parked on residential property. And also, on that note too, not for us, but the Board of Aldermen is also coming out with a city ordinance about commercial vehicles on the streets and cul-de-sacs. They were supposed to vote on it last night, but they had a little problem with definition of commercial vehicle, so they postponed that one. But ours, basically, we have a definition. We're adding a definition for commercial vehicles, or motor vehicles, and commercial trailers. There's also been a problem we have in our regulations right now that says that no commercial trailers are supposed to be on properties, but there's a lot of them in there, and what we're trying to do is limit the amount of trailers like that have bobcats on them and stuff like that being parked in the residential areas. So this regulation kind of tightens up that regulation a bit and actually makes it more clear as to what a commercial motor vehicle is and a commercial trailer is. So those are the regulations. You can read through them. And if you have any suggestions or any questions like that, you get to the staff with your recommendations. At the end of the 35 days, after we get everybody's regulations information back, all their comments, we would sit down and tweak each of these regulations based on what's there, and then bring it to the board for final approvals and to make the actual change within the regulation. So for tonight, I'm making a motion that the board approve to forward these drafts to the different regulatory offices so that we can get the comments back and get them eventually approved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next item of business is approval of the minutes. Mr. Sadi.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of the most recent July meeting.
We have a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Chair's report, I have none. Staff report.
None this evening?
Okay, so motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
These monitors were put in recently, as you can see. They're typically concealed behind those cabinets, but they've recently been activated. You've got the control panel there.